Okay, I think we are live now. I will check in the YouTube app to okay, to confirm that everything is working. Yeah, so we are live. Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone. Welcome to JSS Live. This is our first episode, and JSS Live is the interview series by the Journal of Sports Science, and it's supported by BASIS, the British Association of Sports and Exercise Science. In this first episode, I'm delighted to have here Jean-Benoit Morin, a very good friend of mine and an expert on sports biomechanics. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So thank you very much, JB, for joining us.
Thanks,
And for
Carlos.
accepting. So I guess that to start this conversation, maybe you could introduce yourself for those who maybe doesn't know your work, your background, and your expertise.
Yeah, so I have basically a background in sports science, master's degree, and I passed at the same time a track and field coach diploma. Then I passed a PhD in human locomotion. That was about biomechanics of sprinting already. And then I went into the academic career as an assistant professor, then a full professor. And at the same time, I have some consultancy activities where I basically teach and follow the applications of our research works. And I am currently the director of the sports science and physical education department at the University of Saint-Étienne. That's a small, beautiful city in the center of France. So we have about 1,000 students, and that's my everyday,
Wow.
basically.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. By the way, I forgot to tell our viewers that if you want and you are watching this live, you can ask questions. And at the end, if we have time, we can maybe JV answer a couple of them in case there are some questions. For those of you that are watching this offline, other time of the day or maybe another day, you have the information of JB in the description, the Twitter account, etc., in case you want to contact him. And JB, you are an editor yourself in the Journal of Sports Science, and we are very committed to the applicability of scientific studies. So, in this sense, some of your most popular works are about the study of the force velocity profiles in jumping and sprinting. So for those who are maybe not familiarized with this topic, how would you say that this will help to evaluate and help to optimize training?
So I think we should start with a very basic definition of what is force velocity relationship. It's something that is a characteristic of the human body and the human muscles and the human movement. And it's been, I think the first works on the topic were exactly 1 century ago, or roughly 1 century ago. So it's not very new. The thing is very simple, and everybody can understand that. Our system is not able to produce the same level of force in a given movement under different velocity conditions. So to put it very simply, if you try to lift a weight and you put your maximum intention into it, you know that you will lift the weight faster when the weight is lighter and vice versa. So there is a relationship between your force capability, whatever the context, and the velocity of movement that you will produce if your intention is maximal. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that we observed, and many people before us, the fact that your relationship is very different as mine. And if you compare athletes over the same tasks and the same relative conditions, you may have different relationships. And that's where we put the term profile, that is very subjective. Profile is just the fact that we have different FV relationships. And so by definition, if we have different FV relationships, it means we have different force capabilities in different velocity contexts. And we think it's a basis of better knowing what the sports performance is about for each given individual. If everybody had the same FV relationship, then we would have the same capabilities, and then maybe we would benefit from the same training, or maybe we would have the same training response, but it's definitely not the case. So the idea is to go into what's an individual's heavy relationship in the movement we are interested in, and then maybe try to see if the training input can improve these mechanical variables, and specifically in the sports performance context. So for example, I don't know, if my sport requires force at a very high velocity, and my profile shows that I'm lacking that force in that specific zone, there is a very straightforward thinking that says, if I train specifically in that zone, maybe I will have a specific response in that zone, and in turn improve performance. Because at the end of the day, when you just measure a performance outcome like jump height or sprint time, you just know the result of a very complex process. And the idea is to go into what muscle characteristics lead to that final outcome.
Okay, and how about your experience with, actual people, actual athletes, actual elite organizations implemented that? Have you seen a real world impact of this kind of work of or principles?
Yes, and I think it was, in my experience, it was a very, it's there is academia, there is papers, conclusions, confirmation, refutation game, and there is the real life people implementing things and see it for themselves. And this was a very exciting time. What will happen when coaches apply the methods correctly and when they see the results? Because the coaches know their athletes, and they will immediately know if the values and the conclusions make sense or not. And over the years, I've had a lot of contacts with many people applying our work correctly, and systematically the results made sense. It means they found that helpful. Otherwise, they would have, just forget about it and go and move to something else. But the fact that some clubs and some coaches kept on using this analysis consistently, to me, was a very important step in applying science, because it is not the researchers or the academics who decide if a work is applicable. It's field people, practitioners. They decide. They know for themselves if yes or no this is applicable. It's not us.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your opinion, you consult several elite clubs. What has changed in the last years so science is more applicable in the field? It is the education of the coaches, it is the methods or the technology available to do the measurements. What do you think?
I think it's a bit of all that. For sure, there's been a very important move from the academia field towards the end users of some methods or some results, definitely. And I guess what we are right now doing is exactly that. So journals have been more open to share the knowledge. There's been technology, of course. You can now measure very fast actions with a high-speed video cameras that you couldn't use in the lab 20 years ago. And I think there's been also the importance of coaches' education, like the fact that workshops are organized, online courses are organized, and I see an increasing number of these courses or workshops done by both practitioners and academics. And this is important because when you have 20 people in the room and both academics and practitioners discussing things, you're in the real thing. You're in the direct application. It's not theoretical. It's not ivory tower things.
Okay, cool. So maybe in the next couple of questions, we will move forward to more, peer review question. This is a podcast from a scientific publication. So you are an editor in sports performance in the Journal of Sports Science. And talking about applicability, in your opinion, uh, how much does the applicability of the work weight on your decision to accept or not accept a paper, or to even submit it to review? I mean, those papers with no applicability at all, with maybe just a basic science background behind, are interesting, or are we just looking for applicability?
I think it would be a mistake to just look for applicability, because by definition, you cannot innovate, you cannot push knowledge forward if you don't have that, basic and
Yeah.
maybe more theoretical step. So I think about applicability, but this is not my main point. I would say that my main point is novelty and originality, and of course quality of the overall methods. That's the main point. You want to publish solid science and novel things. Then second comes the possible applicability. If it's an applied work, this is the idea, So, but at some point, if you want to develop some new models, some proof of concepts, I love the idea of proof of concepts, because a proof of concept paper is by definition not very applicable right now, but that's going to be maybe the main application in 20 years. So, and you have to leave some
Yeah.
possibility for that. But I guess my number one factor is novelty, potential impact, short-term impact, that's applicability, and long-term impact, that's novelty of the research question.
Okay, yeah, completely agree, and you bring here a good point with the novelty of the research. But I guess that, at least in my opinion, over the last years, we have seen a huge rise of the number of publications in scientific journals, and maybe you see sometimes papers with the only novelty of applying a known method or a known principle on a new population. So how do we find balance between uh, publishing or studying things with new populations, because many times we can't generalize results from one population to another, and the other extreme of that balance, which is publishing about every possible combination of populations and methods, etc.
Yeah. So this is, to me, novelty doesn't mean that anything that has never been done is a justification.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
because
if it has never been done, it's because it's really not interesting.
exactly.
That's. But novelty could be. I give you a very simple example. Women in sports, studies on soccer players, male soccer players. There's plenty of studies, and we are really lacking knowledge on the girls, and women's soccer is developing. So a study that is transferring a protocol to very specific women population is a novelty in that context. Now, if you take a study that is doing something that's been done in every categories of age except the U17 in a given country, if there is a very big wealth of knowledge around that, maybe that's a bit less novel. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where you put novelty is not on off. It's always relative. So that's where I put the thing. And yes, I know there's been not everything that can be published should be published. That's the idea. And I know there is some
Agree.
systems and some countries where only the number of paper counts. We don't
Yeah.
really care about impact or novelty of the findings, and this is very likely influencing that rise in papers. But yeah, that's the thinking process.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, thank you very much, JB, for being here. Maybe just the last question, since you are an editor in the Journal of Explorer Science, I have this. I'm curious about how you handle your mixed feelings, since you are both an author and an editor. So, as an author, you have felt, the frustration of getting your paper rejected, but as an editor, you also need to reject papers. So how do you handle those, those mixed feelings
It's
when you reject a paper because you know how it feels
yeah,
when you got rejected?
everything is about the quality of the arguments. It's not about rejection or acceptance or not. It's not. Many authors or reviewers have some subjective or personal view of things. No,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
it's
about
not
the arguments.
personal. Yeah,
So my frustration when I get rejected is when the arguments are not fair,
yeah,
definitely. But
I
when the
understand.
arguments are fair, it's just the game. And so my behavior as an editor is exactly the same. Is what fair arguments can I have to tell the authors that their work is not, suitable for publishing in Journal of Sports Sciences? And every time I have this kind of decision, the arguments are pretty clear. And sometimes it's the reviewers who give the very very solid arguments for rejection. So the overarching idea is that fairness and scientific ground of the arguments, because everybody will agree on that.
Okay, perfect. So again, thank you very much, JB, for being here. It was really fun. I hope people will enjoy that as well. So thank you for being here, for watching. We're looking forward to your feedback, and stay tuned for the next one. It should be in a couple of weeks. And also thanks to Basis for supporting this interview. You can learn more about Basis in the description below here in YouTube or in basis.org.uk. So that's all on our side. Take care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.